Welcome to Here Where You Belong, your go-to podcast for exploring belonging with your host and belonging expert, Dia Irby. We are thrilled to have you join us. Together, we'll dive into the depths of what it means for each of us to find our own place in the world, whether it's within our communities, our relationships, or within ourselves. Today's episode is meant to inspire, uplift, and remind you that no matter where you are or where you're headed, you have a place where you truly belong. So grab a cozy spot and settle in. Welcome to Here Where You Belong.
Hello, 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 and welcome home again to Here Where You Belong. Belonging is all about connections. And have I got a fantastic guest for you today? Steve Spiro is a master connector. What? So we're going to hear from him. He has started, when he first got out of college, he started in advertising. And he went on eventually, now he's not in advertising, but here's something interesting. He holds a 4th degree black belt in karate and 1st degree in jujitsu. Did I say that right? Yes, he has his own karate studio. He contributes most of his successes to a strong work ethic, a can-do, never quit attitude, discipline, integrity, and fearlessness that he was able to cultivate in his martial arts. He is, when I say master connector, I'm talking 41,000 contacts. That's more than the New York phone book, which they don't have phone books anymore. He is the author of The Tao of a Master Connector, the way an introvert became a master connector. So if you're an introvert, he's got some wise words for you to help you come out of that. He does a LinkedIn live broadcast every week called, appropriately, the Master Connector Show. He eventually pivoted, like I said, from advertising into technology, and now is a business automation consultant. Oh, yes, we need to automate, eliminate, delegate, automate anything you can. He is big on self-development for himself, but he also loves to inspire people to get out of their comfort zone. And he does this through speaking. Wow. Steve, what an honor and privilege to have you join us today and share your wisdom and knowledge and your story with us. Anything you want to add or subtract from what I said?
Wow. You said it, but I would love to take you everywhere with me. So can I do that? That would be great. But no, you said it perfectly, and we're going to talk a bunch here. But I got to say, what's going on, friends? Steve Spiro, the Master Connector, coming at you live and direct. It's sort of a signature. I have to go with it. So it's sort of I start everything with that. So
yeah, do it again. Do it again.
Sure. Hey, what's going on, friends? Steve Spiro, the Master Connector, coming at you live and direct. That's
yes,
it.
I love it. Love it. Yeah. So you used to be an introvert and you overcame that.
Crazy. Absolutely. Yeah, I was born and raised in the Bronx. And, I don't know, it turns out my dad was also an introvert. I was bullied. I was picked on. I was learning disabled, dyslexic. And yeah, I mean, I was one of those guys growing up where, I wasn't extremely athletic as well. So when they were picking teams, sports teams like basketball, I was like either the last to get picked or never to get picked. So yeah. And then to compound it all, it's all good. It's all good. Today, it's the whole different story. But today, but back then, I went, and I know if you're from Middle America or the South, and even the Northeast, like I am, many people grow up the same people. They went to elementary school, they went to middle school, junior high school, and went to college or high school too, not college per se. And there was a community, right?
Mhm.
Well, I commuted in for high school, so I commuted into New York City. So I had like one friend, and they moved away, and so my friends growing up were Captain Kirk from Star Trek and Ralph Crandon from The Honeymooners and I don't know, Felix Unger from Odd Couple. Those were my friends growing up. TV was my friends, but yeah, it was different. Definitely a different way to grow up for sure.
Well, they didn't argue with you, at least,
They didn't argue, and they made me laugh, so that was good.
Make you laugh. Right. So as this is a lot about belonging, it sounds like you had to deal with not feeling like you belonged anywhere, like too many people do, right?
Yeah, no doubt. I was but there was some stuff drama in my family. My parents got divorced early on. My mom was a little bit aggressive, and so I locked myself in my room. So I didn't connect with anyone. I was just completely isolating myself. So yeah, not again, belonging. I belonged in my room and I belonged on, watching TV. That was my sense of belonging growing up for sure.
Wow. So when did you realize, because, all of us, when we're growing up, what we are experiencing is our reality. And we think that is the same reality everyone else experiences. Like
Sure.
what my normal is what everybody does. Some people they never have a hot breakfast at home, and that's, they maybe eat cereal or a Pop-Tart, and that's their normal. And they think, isn't that what everybody does for breakfast? And then there's some people that they have the homemade biscuits. Grandma makes biscuits and eggs and the whole bacon and, a big breakfast. Isn't that what everybody does? So we all grow up with our normal thinking that that's what everybody's normal is. When did you realize that it really probably wasn't what you needed to be doing, of locking yourself in your room and having the TV as your friend?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, at some point I just started to realize I had a higher calling. And I knew there was a part of me that, maybe it was a childhood fantasy, but, I watched Superman growing up and Batman. And there's a part of me that, like, I'm a superhero, right? So, but you can't be a superhero in your house. So there's not much you could accomplish there. So I started working out. I started, because again, being bullied, I'm like, all right, I'm gonna get stronger. I started doing push-ups, and I started to actually go from like 5 push-ups to 10. And I worked my way up to like 50 push-ups in a row. And as a kid, and I started to see a sense of accomplishment. Well, fast forward, not that long after that, I was at a party. My mom, it was an adult party where there was a table full of the kids, and there was a young man that was about a couple years younger than me, and he was talking about the martial arts. And I saw a spark in his eye. And I had grown up watching Kung Fu, David Carradine, and Bruce Lee, and and some of his movies, and Chuck Norris, and all those shows, and Saturday morning Kung Fu theater, and all that. And I had a little bug. And actually, just to rewind the tape a little bit, when I was probably about 10 years old, being bullied, my parents thought they were doing me a favor, and they brought me to judo class. And so I remember getting the gi, the uniform, and it was a great experience. But the challenge was when I got back from the class, and the neighborhood found out about it. They're like, okay, let's see what you got. So it made it even worse. But there was a bug. There was that, like, the little seed that was planted. And so I started found a martial arts studio that I really enjoyed. I joined it, and that started to, now a kind of a family was born. There was a place that I could kind of start to belong, right? The name of your show, right? And I started to feel like, okay, I've got a place here, and I was able to start to use my skills and talents, which was persistence and grit, and operate that in a place where I can actually succeed. And I believe that was the start of that journey. And I'll pause there in case you want to go in any direction you want to go there. But
Well, that's great. You found the place of belonging for you and how
yeah,
you could fit in. And part of that is because everybody else there has the same goal. So
right.
part of when you're gathering with people and finding your sense of belonging, it's because you have something in common.
And what's also interesting? When I was growing up, before I found the martial arts, because of all the pain and hurt that I experienced when I did make it out of my room, opened the door, and actually went out to be with people like my sisters, I I learned how to block pain. And I mentally block pain. And I would take my hand and I'd hand it to my sister, and I say, okay, bite it, pinch it, scratch it, no pain. And I was able to block it out. Well, fast forward now back to where I was in the arts, and I found out that the philosophy of the school, and it's not just to my school, but it's in general, especially in the karate world, was to show no emotion, show no pain. I'm like, great. So I'm going to thrive here. That's exactly what I'm good at. So yeah, and so we had that in common, right? And I had my purpose. I went to class. It was about activity. In fact, we couldn't even wipe our brow with sweat. Otherwise, drop and give me 50 push-ups. So there wasn't any kind of like chit-chatting in class. We were just all about class. You couldn't even wipe your sweat. You couldn't even go for water. I mean, it was so not very social. So it was good enough because we all, like you said, had a purpose. But at the same time, we were busy, and there wasn't a lot of connecting with each other, right? And we had our roles. In fact, the white belts were told, zip it, like keep it quiet. Like, in fact, if the white belt spoke out of turn, kind of like, if you're at, some people, I heard, and I've heard this later, but you're raised at a table, and don't talk, until you're spoken to as a kid, right? That kind of mentality in the martial arts, as a white belt, as a beginner, you weren't supposed to speak unless you were spoken to. So, hey, that's great. I don't like talking anyway, so I'm good in that place as well. So it just helped. I fit in because a lot of the things worked perfectly for how I was kind of working around my brokenness, if you will.
So good. So we can find a connection and a belonging without speaking. And so the words that we use could possibly get in the way sometimes of us feeling like we belong, right?
Yeah.
Now
My sensei called me blockhead. Every time I did open my mouth, he called me blockhead. I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to keep my mouth shut, because anytime I say something, I'm getting ridiculed here. So forget it. I'm not going to say.
Yeah, that would be an encouragement to keep your mouth shut. What a sense of discipline to learn. So you listed a plethora of benefits that you have learned for life through the martial arts. Do you want to go back through some of them and talk about how going through that training process, how you've been able to implement that in your life?
No doubt about it. Yeah, I mean, right now I'm not training the arts so much these days, but I am at the gym pretty much every day. I'm like 5, 6 days a week, and these days now I'm challenging myself with the Stairmaster step machine, whatever. And I'm up to 26 minutes at this point, and it's brutal. But listen, I learned through the arts that it's mind over matter, right? It's like a lot of times our body wants to give up, but it's more because our mind wants to give up, not our body, right? And so I learned how to just push through it and embrace the suck, right? The first 3 letters of success is SUC, suck, right? So you got to go through the suck to get through success, right? And so I kind of learned that to just fight through it. My sensei he was a yeah, I want to keep this G. So he was an interesting guy.
Beast.
I'll just say it like
He
that.
was the
Yeah.
beast.
He was a beast. I like that. That works. I'll use that. And he was like a drill instructor meets football coach, nasty one though, right? And so in the middle of the summer, we worked out it was a storefront, but it was a single level flat blacktop roof storefront where it was all tarred across. So you can imagine in the middle of the summer, it would get hot and there was no windows. We had a plexiglass front window to the storefront and a door. And the door actually had like wood over the front. Somebody must have broke the glass door and it was wood over it. And he would not only close the front door and the back door, which was the only sense of ventilation possible, but sometimes he'd even put the heat on. So we just and again, this is not today, but back then, no water, can't wipe your brow. So you just learn how to suck up and just get through it. So I learned how to just fight through, uncomfortability and things that, just mind over matter, right? That was one lesson. So the next lesson that I learned is overcoming fears. I remember there was a guy in my class, God rest his soul, he passed away young, but his name was Sharif, and he was an African-American guy. He had gotten, as a kid, he was on his bike, and a white guy, unfortunately, hit him. I don't think it was on purpose, but hit him, and it basically crippled his one arm. So he had a a limp arm, and he had his good arm. By the way, his fist was like it was like it was like ham. It was huge, and he was a little angry and aggressive, and I looked like maybe the guy who hit him when that was driving, if you know what I mean. And he had these legs that were super strong too, and he went out to kill you. And so that was a big obstacle I had to overcome, actually to fight him. But I realized, you know what? He has like when I get in on him to fight, we're sparring. If I'm closer, he can't use his legs because if I'm move in on him. And if I'm able to pin his one arm, he has no other weapons. So I learned how to and it took a lot of overcoming and, mind over matter but I learned how to, figure out, okay, what am I going to do to accomplish that? I wound up getting my, through not just because of Sharif, but because of a lot of other fighting. My sensei, the beast guy, was a 6'5", 300-pound large man who played football and basketball, but he was super fast. And we were, in the martial arts, you're kind of like, you should model your instructor. You should do what the instructor. Well, I'm not that. I'm not 6'5". I'm 5'7" barely. And, maybe back then I was maybe 140. So I can't do what he was doing. And I was getting my eyebrows split and, all sorts of stitches all over, multiple trips to the ER. So I learned how to, come up with what my strength was going to be. And I learned to figure out, okay, what can I use from my strengths? I had to self-evaluate. There's some things you can learn from a coach or a sensei or a mentor, but sometimes you got to just self-evaluate and you got to figure out, okay, what's going to work for me? And so I realized that, you know what? I'm not super flexible. I started training at 20 years old. Unlike a lot of people I'd seen who had started younger, they were more flexible than I was. I don't have very long limbs, but I could really maximize my what's called reverse punch. So I started to train and make my fists really strong, and I started to become really good at punching. And so I started to develop technique. And then fast forward at some point later on, uh, you know, kind of a funny humorous story, but everyone knew in my class that somehow, some way, the punch was coming and it would get in. I would get it in. And at one point, I remember we were in the locker room changing out, and all of the guys were, with shirts off, whatever, and everyone was comparing their tattoos, which was basically the bruises, the black and blue marks that they had got from me hitting them with my fist. So but it was a lesson, right? It was a lesson of, okay, you have to self-evaluate. You got to figure out what's going to work for you, and you're going to be able to, figure out what's going to be most effective. And so that was a big lesson for me. And there's so many. Or another one I'll tell you is my, if you don't quit, you win. And
That's
I appreciate
amazing.
that.
Yeah.
Well, and then you fast forward. So then I found a mentor in my life, and I didn't say this when I was introducing myself, but going into the advertising industry, eventually getting introduced to a very successful entrepreneur who challenged me. And he said, Steve, besides getting me into books and audios and networking, he said, you need to meet three strangers every day. Because he knew I needed to get outside of myself, which again, if you live in the deep South, I've traveled a lot and in the South, and you talk to somebody for the first time, stranger, after 5 minutes, like, y'all should come over to for dinner tonight. But not in New York. In New York, they're going to kill you. They're going to kidnap you. But I did it, and it really stretched me. But he was such a interesting, you talk about humor. He has incredible humor, amazing charisma, just a presence, a confidence. And I didn't have that. And, in general, coming up the ranks, so to speak, of, the business world, I saw people like that. And I'm like, I can never be that. And I felt like I would play the comparison game all the time, and I always lost. And I looked at him, I'm like, I can never be that. Now, he was a role model to me. He was somebody I admire. I still to this day admire and respect him. I cannot be that. But I finally started to your point, I started to realize, okay, I have my own strengths, my own, values. The things that make me, people would always say, one of the things about you, Steve, you're very sincere, and I started to, and that sort of got to where, the pillars that we talked about before we went live, right? Where authenticity and leading with my vulnerabilities and my weaknesses became a big part of who I was, and being others focused. And, I started to cultivate those things because I realized that I could connect with people. I might not be able to connect with them with being super witty and funny like he is. They might not have this amazing passion and just a charisma about me, but people, I could relate with people and I could connect with them in other ways. It's not just one way, and it's got to work for me. And so, yeah, that's a big part of me as well.
That's awesome. Let's quickly talk about those four, is it pillars of being a master
Pillars.
connector? Pillars?
Yeah.
All
Yeah,
right.
absolutely. Yeah. So the first I covered, right, which is being authentic, connecting authentically, leading with your vulnerabilities and your weaknesses, which I found, one of the talks when I'm up on stage is I speak about, you know, breaking through barriers in this complex digital era to create real human connection. It's a little lengthy, but that's the premise, right? And we're in this amazing connected digital era, right? But at the same time, we're disconnected. The screen has created a barrier. I remember, talking to a young man on LinkedIn who I connected with, and I said to him, because my policy, if you connect with me on LinkedIn, I want to get on a call with you. I want to know what you're about, not to sell, not at all, but just to understand, hey, if you're going to be connected, we're going to be connected on LinkedIn. I want to know more about you than just what's written in the profile. He writes back, I don't do calls. Okay. I noticed in his profile, he's a car salesperson. So I wrote back, I said, okay, no problem. I said, I'm interested in maybe getting a car. He's like, let's get on a call. I said, wait a minute. I said, I thought you don't believe in calls. Well, I said, listen, and in a very polite way, I said, you blew it. Right. But you know what? People are interesting. There's a barrier. They think that, I don't know. They think like you're gonna stick your hand through the screen and I don't know, do something to you. I don't know what it is, but when I do get on calls with people, I'm authentic. I want to share some of those vulnerabilities. And I found, and this guy really cultivated, if you will, during COVID, when I was on, I don't know, 10, 15 calls a day, it seemed like, right? And I was able to I felt more connected during that time frame than I had in my entire whole life. And I found that people were getting emotional because I shared my story. They shared theirs, and they were like, Steve, I'm telling you things that I don't know if I've ever told anyone else, right? I'd see them well up. Some of them would actually start crying. Like the connections became powerful. It became powerfully connected with people. So vulnerability, and those kinds of things. And I know Brené Brown did a talk on that, which is phenomenal. But that's one. Second is being others focused. I kind of alluded to that. Not having an agenda, looking to add value, right? And the last 3 years have been the best financial years of my life, and I believe it's because I've sown good seed. I've thrown good seed, and we know that I call it in my book the secret of the corn. You put 3 or 4 kernels of corn in the ground. You till the soil, you fertilize the soil, you water. And you're not going to get apples. You're going to get corn because what you plant, what you sow, you reap, right? We know that, and it's called the law of sowing and reaping. But you also have the law of increasing return kicks in, because when the seed eventually take and the stalk comes up, now there's about 9 or 10 ears of corn with hundreds of kernels in each of those ears of corn. So you get a lot back. You get way back. But I don't do this. I don't add value to try to get something. I do it because it's the right thing to do, and I feel great about it. So
Well,
adding value.
it would go back to the first one. If you're being
Yeah.
authentic and real because
Yeah.
you really care about people, then you don't have an ulterior motive
That's right.
in the giving into the other people. You
No doubt.
genuinely care about them, and that's why you are investing in them. You know what? We are going to come back in a minute for the other two. These two
Cliffhanger.
are great. We'll have to just soak it in. Hey there! Isn't my guest amazing? So glad you joined us today. In this world that often feels disconnected, building community and fostering belonging are essential. That's why I created this podcast, to bring inspiring people to you, to encourage you to create that sense of belonging and community, no matter where you are. If you're being blessed by my guest, and we have some more, like, subscribe, and share this podcast. You know who needs to hear this. Stay connected, stay true to yourself, and always remember, you belong. Now, back to our amazing guest. Welcome back to Here Where You Belong. I'm here with the fabulous master connector, Steve Spiro, who is telling us so much good stuff about how to be a master connector. We've talked about the first two pillars of that. And Steve, let's continue with the second two.
Absolutely. Well, the first two, just to review, right? Being authentic, connecting authentically. The second is being others focused and being a go-giver, right? And like you said, they both commingle. They kind of do tie into, and I feel like all 4 pillars, they kind of, commingle together, right? But the third, in no particular order, is having the grit to overcome obstacles. And I, in telling a little bit of my martial arts background, we kind of covered that a little bit. And one of the things I want to share is, I believe we all have our challenges, and there's all sorts of quotes on this, right? But here's the deal. I believe in whatever challenge you're going through, there's good in that, and when a storm comes, I was listening to an audio just a bit ago, and from Texas. I know Texas got recently hit with some storms, and there's quite a few times Texas has been hit with storms, and the trees that were weak kind of got blown down. Well, they just probably needed to be. It needed to happen, right? And sometimes there's pruning going on, and so there's something for me. When something happens, there's something good that should come out of it. And so my dyslexia, my learning, disability, which, by the way, I'm old enough that there was no testing back then, and I've never ever been tested, but I know, because I just know that I have that dyslexia. Well, you know what it did for me? It made me a creative problem solver. It gave me the ability to think about ways to get around challenges, right? I kind of shared some of those examples, right, of self-evaluating and creating my strength, which was my reverse punch, and things like that. I self-taught myself how to a background in the graphic design area, in advertising. So I was the peak of my career as an associate creative director, but I taught myself Illustrator. I taught myself Adobe Photoshop, and nowadays Canva, and which, by the way, I think Canva is not as intuitive as it should be, but that's a side note. But grit and persistence, I figured it out, and all sorts of stuff. Right when we just got a huge flat screen TV and bigger than we had before, and now of course we need a unit for it to sit on. So ordered it. It's going to come. I'm going to have to put it together. Of course, the usual stuff. I don't know how to deal with instructions, so I have to figure it out without instructions. That's just the way I work. Fortunately, my wife, because sometimes I mess up. I might put something on backwards. So my wife's there to help oversee and supervise. But that's just the way I am. But I feel like it's a blessing because I learned how to because a lot of people, they hit an obstacle, they hit a challenge, and they're like, oh man, what do I do now? No, my brain goes, it goes into search mode. Okay, what can I do to figure out here's a big boulder. Okay, are we going to climb over it? Are we going to break through it? Are we going to go around it? Are we going to go dig under? We got to figure out a way, but we're going to come up with a way to figure it out. And I believe it's a huge blessing. And again, we spoke about it in the beginning of the show. If you don't quit, you win. But you'll get stronger, right? I remember, when I, as a kid, I was with my dad. My parents were divorced. Sundays became the day that my dad would come to see us. And I did. That was before I really started locking myself in my room. I did get out with friends back then, and I had my bike. And I found a couple of very large rocks, and I found some wood on the street. Again, this is the Bronx. It's an urban city. It's like a jungle, whatever. And so I found a board, and I found some rocks, and I said, all right, I'm going to do like this Evel Knievel jump off a ramp. And well, I went up in the air, turned around, and landed on my shoulder, broke my collarbone. But the doctor said, well, when it heals, it's going to be stronger than it was. And that's how it works, right? You get stronger when when something happens. So having the grit to overcome obstacles is the third. And then the fourth is building community and growing connections. And that's been a lot of fun. Initially, it wasn't fun when I started meeting strangers. I know maybe it's not in the South, but in New York, it's stranger danger, right? It's like, that, people were taught, don't talk to strangers, if, you're going to get kidnapped and all these things. And, and I have some crazy stories. Again, I'm trying to keep it G-rated, but I had people, call me in the middle of the night of the same, I didn't talk to female strangers because I'm married and I don't want to go there, but I'd have guys that would call me in the middle of the night, proposition me, if you know what I mean. So just crazy stuff, like, because I was silly and I was meeting people everywhere. I'm in the bathroom at the restaurant and I'm talking to the guy next to me in the urinal. Like, don't do that. But I did stupid stuff like that. And people were just had misunderstandings of what I was doing. But I started to get, I started growing network. And then I started to learn, how do I really connect with those people? And that's where the first and second pillars kind of came into play and develop a community. And nowadays, obviously, having the Master Connector show, and every week we got our community come in to see what new content we're putting out. And every day I post, and now obviously doing speaking, and it's just fun growing a community and really growing those connections. And I've grown now to so full disclosure, I've got 20,000 contacts on my phone, and I'm up to about 29,000 LinkedIn connections. So at one point we took the cumulative figure, there's some overlap, and that's how we got to 41,000, but it's probably bigger than that, quite frankly. But regardless of that, to me, you grow a network for a couple of reasons, right? The one is the fact is you can have more opportunity, right? The more people you network, the more potential opportunity. I've had amazing collaborations from all the different people I have in my network. Mm. If you have a message you want to broadcast, you could broadcast it to a large network of people. It's incredible, right?
Well, I just thought of a question going back to the obstacles. Have you ever had an obstacle that stopped you?
Yeah, but not forever. So, like, full disclosure, well, it stopped me for a while. It kind of, but like, I just don't have a quit bone in my body. That's the thing about me, right? Married 35 years, we could have definitely been a statistic, right? I think the divorce rate is probably at 60%. No judgment, just us, right? And we both come from divorced families, so we had no clue what a healthy marriage was to look like. But I don't know how to quit. So at one point, working with my mentor, I was so frustrated because his method style is so different than mine. He's quick to kind of make suggestions without. I'm a little more detailed. I think that a lot of the details matter. And he's like, I got it. And I'm like, and it just didn't. And so I was frustrated and wanted to just quit, and not wanted to quit, but I was like, I just got, I thought about like, okay, is this ever going to work? And it wasn't until I had some crucial conversations. That was a big one. Another, by the way, great book. It's called Crucial Conversations. Don't remember the name of the author. Shame on me, but great book. But yeah, and having those right conversations and and getting comfort in myself and understanding, listen, I'm always going to be a second class somebody else, but I'll be a first class me, and embracing who I was. So that was a period where I almost quit. But yeah,
You did
I
it.
got out of the advertising industry. But so you could say I do quit stuff, but
But no, but there's a difference in quitting and redesigning.
yeah,
So
yeah,
you took all of your skills that you had in the advertising business, you just redirected it and have created a new something. That doesn't
for
mean
sure,
you quit,
for sure.
right?
Yeah,
Right.
no doubt.
And do you think, I mean, there are people that brag about how many friends they have on Facebook, but
Yeah,
they haven't. So there's a difference between having contacts and having connections, or
correct.
having a list of people and a community. Would you
Absolutely.
agree
And
with that?
I would agree 100%. And that's why everybody that I connect with, I want to have a follow-up call with, I want to have a follow-up conversation with. I love LinkedIn because it gives you the ability. It has what they refer to now as the catch-up feature on the app, which basically you just hit the button and it shows, okay, happy birthday, or for those who have their birthday today, or happy work anniversary, or happy, congrats on your job change or your promotion. So you can hit a button. So now that gives me an opportunity, at least if it's just birthday alone, it's at least one time a year to reconnect with them. But with those other things, multiple times a year. Now, not everybody responds. The only ones that respond, I'll send a message. Hey, we should get on a call. Now, if I've already spoken to them, let's catch up. If I haven't, we should get on a call, right? And I'm always looking to cultivate those relationships and create relationships, not just have another number on my social media platform.
Right. So advice, tips, have a real connection. It, like you said, they all fold over each other. Being authentically connected with someone because you care about them and you're going to invest in them gives you the opportunity to be connected. And the third one was
Great.
what?
Overcome obstacles.
Overcome obstacles. Yes. Oh, how can I
Yeah.
forget that one?
Which it relates, but it doesn't, right? It's a lot of them are
An
relational. That
obstacle to
one's not, but it
overcome.
is.
It's an obstacle
It's
to overcome to be connected authentically.
yeah, exactly.
I
Exactly.
see it. It
And
works. It works.
it works. Yeah, I think it works. And authentically, not only caring about them, but by showing your weakness, it allows people to say it's okay for me to show a little bit of my softer side too.
Right.
And then they open up, you know?
If you feel like somebody's perfect and they do everything right, then you're not
Yeah,
going to want to be vulnerable with them and show them your weakness.
correct. Correct.
Exactly.
I like to say let's because a lot of people want to get on a call and start with the what do you do dance, I call it. Like, so what do you do? What do you do? And I'm like, can we not play the what do you do dance? Can we do something different? Let's see. I want to hear your story. I'll tell you mine. We'll go from there. And my mentality is let's let the kids play in the sandbox first before we start to talk business. Let them get to know each other.
That is a great analogy. What two children? I mean, children are phenomenal at meeting strangers. You're at the
Yeah.
park, the parents are sitting on the benches on the other sides and
Mhm.
they're watching their kids in the sandbox.
Yeah.
Which child is going to say, so what school do you go to and
Right.
where do you
Yeah.
live? And now let's get in the box and play. It's like,
Right.
hey,
No.
you want to make get this truck and see if we can pile up the dirt? They just go at
Right.
it. There's a certain element of freedom in childlike connecting that we need to return to.
We do. There's no doubt
Maybe.
about it.
So, wow. Well, this has been
Great story.
fantastic, Steve. I can see how you have connected so many people and you've narrowed down your wisdom into four great pillars of truth for connecting, being a grand connector. And you can find your book on Amazon, The Tao of being a, wait, I'm going to, don't,
Tao of a master connector. That's
The
it. The way an
Tao of
introvert
a
became a
master
master
connector.
connector.
Yes.
Yeah.
Any final words you have for our listeners today?
Yeah. To be honest, whenever I have an opportunity, and I really feel this is a privilege to be on with you and your community, I just want everyone to understand that I'm just I'm just a regular guy. And if I could do this, you could do it. If I could be a master connector, you can as well. It just takes, some grit, takes a little bit of courage, some skills, but anyone can do it. And, I just want to know, I want you to know that you are amazing and you have skills, you have talents, you have things that the world needs to hear about. The world needs to hear from you. Now, whether you want to write a book and be an author like me or an inspirational public speaker like I am, maybe not, but they need to hear from you. So just understand you're special, you're amazing, and just know that.
Well, that is a wonderful closing comment. Thank you, Steve. So, wow. Are you inspired to go out and meet 3 strangers? Well, they won't be strangers after you meet them, but meet 3 new people. That's a great takeaway. Thank you. So please, thank you for being with us. Stay connected, stay true to yourself, and always remember, you belong. This is Dia Irby with Here Where You Belong. Until next time, bye now.
Thanks for tuning in to Here Where You Belong. We hope today's episode has inspired you to embrace the beauty of belonging in your own life. Remember, no matter where you are or where you're headed, you have a place where you truly belong. Join us again next time for more insightful conversations and heartwarming stories. Until then, stay connected, stay true to yourself, and always remember that you belong.